Laura Martinez stood at the edge of her research garden, taking notes on her tablet as the twin suns of New Eden painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. The alien plants she studied had adapted well to the colony's soil, their blue-tinted leaves stretching toward the warming rays of dawn. After 5 years on this world, the sight still took her breath away. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of native flowers, making her pause her work to enjoy the moment. The colony had grown significantly since she and Peter first arrived. What started as a handful of prefab buildings had evolved into a thriving community of 500 people, complete with hydroponics farms, research facilities, and comfortable living quarters. Peter's voice crackled through her communicator, warm and familiar. "Remember to eat something, dear. You've been out there since sunrise." She smiled, knowing her husband was probably watching her through the security feeds while managing his morning duties. As the colony's security chief, Peter took his job seriously, but he never let it stop him from checking on her. "Just finishing up the growth measurements," Laura replied, brushing a strand of brown hair from her face. "These hybrid vegetables are showing promising results. We might have solved the nutrient density issues." The research garden spread out before her, a patchwork of earth plants mixed with native species. It had taken years of careful experimentation to find the right combinations, but her work was finally paying off. The colony would soon be able to grow more of its own food, reducing their dependence on supply ships from Earth. Laura walked between the neat rows of plants, documenting the progress of each specimen. Her trained eye caught subtle changes in leaf patterns and growth rates. This was why she had come to New Eden, to help humanity adapt to life on other worlds. The fact that she had found love here was an unexpected bonus. She remembered the day she first met Peter, during the colony's second expansion phase. He had been overseeing the installation of new security systems, and she had been arguing with the construction crew about preserving a patch of native flora. Instead of dismissing her concerns, Peter had helped her develop a compromise that protected both the plants and the colony's security needs. They were married 6 months later. A movement in her peripheral vision caught her attention. One of the security drones was making its regular patrol, its quiet hum barely noticeable against the morning sounds. The sight reminded her of the recent changes in patrol patterns. Peter had been increasing security measures over the past week, though he hadn't explained why. Laura checked her tablet's time display and decided to head back to the main complex. As she walked along the well-worn path, she noticed more drones than usual. Something was definitely different about today's security routine. Inside the colony's main building, the atmosphere was charged with an unusual energy. Scientists and technicians hurried through the corridors, speaking in hushed tones. Laura caught fragments of conversations about unusual readings and strange signals. She found Peter in the security office, surrounded by holographic displays showing various sensor readings. His usual relaxed demeanor was replaced by focused concentration. He looked up as she entered, his face softening into a smile. "Those readings keep getting stronger," he said, pointing to one of the displays. "Something's out there, moving through our solar system. The pattern doesn't match any known human ships." Laura studied the data scrolling across the screen. Could it be natural phenomenon? A cosmic anomaly? Peter shook his head. "The movement is too controlled. Whatever it is, it's using some kind of propulsion system we've never seen before. I've already sent a report to Earth Command, but it'll be days before we hear back." Laura placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Should we be worried?" "Probably not," Peter replied, covering her hand with his. "But I'd rather be overcautious than underprepared. I've already upgraded our security protocols. The colony is as safe as I can make it." Neither of them could have known then just how important those extra security measures would prove to be. As they stood together, watching the mysterious signals grow stronger, the true test of their love and humanity's resilience was drawing near. The peaceful life they had built on New Eden was about to face its greatest challenge. The alien ship appeared in the morning sky 3 days later, descending through New Eden's atmosphere like a silver teardrop. Its surface rippled with patterns of light that made it difficult to look at directly. The colony's warning sirens remained silent. The vessel had responded to their hails with proper first contact protocols. Peter stood at the colony's main gate, surrounded by his security team. Each officer wore standard protective gear, weapons carefully concealed but ready if needed. They had drilled for first contact scenarios, but this was real. "Keep your positions," Peter spoke into his comm unit. "Remember your training. We're diplomatic but cautious." The ship landed in the designated area, 300 meters from the colony's perimeter. A soft hiss filled the air as its surface shifted, forming an opening. 3 tall figures emerged, their bodies covered in what looked like flowing metal. Laura watched from the science building's observation window, her heart racing with excitement and fear. As the colony's lead xenobotanist, she would be part of the welcome committee. She straightened her uniform and headed down to join the group. The aliens called themselves the Vraxians. Their spokesman, Scathar, stood nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. "We come seeking knowledge," he said through a translation device. His voice had an artificial smoothness to it. "Your species is of great interest to our studies." Colony Administrator Betty Walsh led the formal introductions. Peter stayed close to Laura as she explained her work with hybrid plants. The Varaxians showed particular interest in her research, especially her methods for combining Earth and alien DNA. "Your ability to adapt other life forms is fascinating," Scathar said, his upper arms making graceful gestures, while his lower ones remained still. "We would be honored if you would share your expertise with us." Over the next few days, the Varaxians integrated themselves into the colony's daily routine. They set up temporary labs next to the research facilities, sharing some of their own scientific knowledge. But something about their behavior made Peter uneasy. "They ask too many questions about our biological processes," he told Laura one evening in their quarters. "And their interest in your genetic modification techniques seems excessive." Laura was reviewing data from a joint experiment on her tablet. "They're xenobiologists, Peter. Of course they're interested in our biology. This could be a huge opportunity for both species." "Maybe," Peter replied, but he doubled the number of security drones monitoring the Vraxian ship. He also noticed how they seemed to test the colony's response times, creating small incidents that required security intervention. 1 week into the Vraxians' visit, Laura was invited to their ship to observe their research methods. Peter insisted on accompanying her, but Scathar politely refused. "Our instruments are calibrated for 1 additional life form only," the alien explained. "More would disrupt the readings. We assure you, your mate will be safe with us." Laura squeezed Peter's hand. "I'll be fine. They've been nothing but professionals so far." Peter watched as his wife walked toward the alien ship with Scathar. Something in the alien's posture had changed, a subtle shift that triggered his combat-trained instincts. He returned to the security office and pulled up every available camera feed. The Varaxian ship's exterior rippled again, but this time Peter noticed something different. Tiny protrusions had appeared along its hull, similar to weapon ports he'd seen on military vessels. The ship's energy signature was also changing, growing stronger in a pattern that didn't match their previous readings. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command and began typing rapidly. The message was brief. "First contact protocols compromised. Hostile intent suspected. Request immediate response." He knew help would take days to arrive, but he had to try. On his screens, Laura disappeared into the Vraxian ship. Peter's fingers moved across his console, activating every surveillance system he had secretly installed around the landing zone. Whatever the Vraxians were planning, they would soon learn that humans were not as defenseless as they appeared. Inside the Vraxian ship, Laura tried to hide her amazement at the organic-looking technology surrounding her. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and floating screens appeared and disappeared as Scathar led her through the corridors. "Your research into genetic adaptation is primitive," Scathar said, his translation device making the words sound almost musical. but it shows promise. We have much to teach you. The laboratory they entered was vast, much larger than it should have been given the ship's external size. Tanks of swirling liquid lined the walls, each containing different specimens. Laura noticed some held plant samples from her own research garden. "When did you collect these?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She hadn't authorized any sample collection from her garden. Scathar's skin rippled with new patterns. "We have been studying your colony longer than you realize. Your species has an interesting approach to survival. So adaptable, yet so fragile." The door behind them sealed with a soft hiss. 2 more Vraxians entered the lab, their metal-like coverings now showing hints of red. Laura felt her heart rate increase as she noticed their changed demeanor. "I think it's time for me to return to the colony," she said, moving toward the sealed door. The aliens made no attempt to stop her, but they didn't need to. The door remained firmly shut. Scathar moved to one of the floating screens, his 4 arms working in perfect coordination. "You humans are fascinating test subjects, so confident in your abilities, yet unaware of your true place in the galaxy's hierarchy." The tanks along the walls began to glow brighter. Laura saw more specimens now. Tissue samples, cellular structures she recognized as human. "What have you done?" "We are scientists, like you," Scathar replied. "But our goals are different. We don't seek cooperation. We seek perfection. Your species represents an interesting evolutionary branch, one that needs to be properly documented before it is pruned." Laura's scientific mind raced to understand what she was seeing. The specimens were being subjected to some kind of targeted mutation. "You're developing a biological weapon." Very observant, Scathar's skin turned a deep purple. "Your colony will help us understand how humans respond to specific genetic alterations. The data will be invaluable for our future encounters with your species." Through the terror rising in her chest, Laura remembered something important. Peter always prepared for the worst. He would have watched her enter the ship. He would have noticed something was wrong. She just needed to stay alive long enough for him to act. "Why tell me this?" she asked, buying time as she carefully observed the lab's layout. "Why reveal your plan?" The alien commander moved closer, looming over her. "Because you will help us perfect our work. Your understanding of human genetic structures, combined with our advanced techniques, will accelerate our research significantly." Laura backed away until she hit one of the specimen tanks. "I won't help you harm my people. Your cooperation is not required," Scathar said. "Only your presence. Even now, your body's responses to stress are providing valuable data." The other 2 Vraxians began preparing various instruments. Laura saw needles, scanners, and devices she couldn't identify. Her scientific curiosity was overshadowed by pure survival instinct. Through a small viewport, she could see the colony in the distance. Somewhere in that collection of buildings, she knew Peter was watching. Her husband never took unnecessary risks, but he never abandoned his people either. She just had to be smart and stay strong. "Your mate's security measures were admirable," Scathar said, as if reading her thoughts. "But they were designed to keep dangers out. They are useless now that the threat is already inside." Laura allowed herself a small smile, remembering all the nights Peter had spent upgrading the colony's systems. "You don't know humans very well," she said quietly. "And you definitely don't know my husband." Peter sat in the dimly lit security office, his fingers moving across multiple screens with practiced precision. The security feeds showed him everything happening inside the Vraxian ship, thanks to the microscopic drones he had attached to Laura's clothes. He forced himself to stay calm as he watched his wife face the aliens. "Begin emergency protocol, Silent Night," he spoke softly into his comm unit. Throughout the colony, hidden systems came to life without triggering any visible alerts. The colonists had drilled for this, though they had never expected to use it. On one screen, Betty Walsh nodded slightly as she received his coded message. The colony administrator began quietly evacuating non-essential personnel to the underground shelters. They moved in small groups, making it look like normal shift changes. Peter opened a hidden panel in his desk and pulled out a small device. It was something he had built after studying the Vraxian ship's energy patterns. He didn't know if it would work, but he had to try. "Security Team Alpha, maintain normal patrol patterns," he ordered. "Beta Team, gear up and move through the maintenance tunnels. Radio silence from this point forward." The maintenance tunnels were his secret advantage. The Vraxian scans had shown them the main colony layout, but not the network of narrow passages Peter had added during construction. He had insisted they were for repair access. In reality, they were his backup plan. Peter watched another screen showing the alien ship's power readings. They were building toward something. Whatever the Vraxians planned to do, they would do it soon. He needed to move faster. In the armory, his security teams were putting on the new suits he had designed. They looked like normal maintenance gear, but each one contained advanced protection against biological and chemical weapons. Peter had ordered them months ago, claiming they were for toxic spill prevention. "Move into position," he typed into a secure pad. On his screens, he saw his people disappearing into hidden access points throughout the colony. Years of paranoia were finally paying off. The Vraxian ship's hull shifted again, more weapon ports appearing. Peter allowed himself a grim smile. The aliens thought they were being clever, revealing their weapons slowly to avoid setting off alarms. They didn't know that his systems had mapped their entire ship during its landing. He switched to the feed from inside the ship's lab. Laura was standing her ground, facing the alien commander. Pride mixed with fear as he watched her. She was buying time, just as they had discussed in their what-if conversations late at night. Peter's hand moved to a small photo on his desk. It showed him and Laura on their wedding day, both of them laughing. He turned it face down. He couldn't afford emotions right now. His wife needed the security chief, not the husband. The device he had built started blinking, showing that it was ready. It would only work once, and timing would be crucial. The Vraxians' technology was advanced, but it had one weakness. It relied too heavily on synchronized systems. "All teams in position," his pad displayed. Peter took a deep breath and began the final preparations. He had planned for this moment since the aliens first landed, laying out each step with military precision. A new alert flashed on his screen. The Vraxian ship was powering up its main systems. They were getting ready to launch their attack. But Peter had already accessed their landing logs, studied their protocols, and found their blind spots. He reached for his tactical vest and checked his weapon. The time for watching was almost over. Soon, the Vraxians would learn why humans were considered one of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because of their technology or strength, but because of how far they would go to protect their loved ones. "Hold on, Laura," he whispered, standing up. "The show's about to start." Peter's first strike came without warning. One moment, the Vraxian ship's communication systems were working perfectly. The next, they were completely dead. Inside the ship, Skithar's skin flickered with patterns of alarm as his crew reported the failure. "Impossible," the alien commander said, moving away from Laura to check the nearest control panel. "Our systems are self-repairing. No primitive human technology cooled." The ship's artificial gravity shifted suddenly, sending the aliens stumbling. Laura grabbed onto a nearby tank to steady herself, hiding her smile. She recognized Peter's signature in these precise disruptions. Outside, Peter moved through the maintenance tunnels with his Alpha team. Each member wore the specially designed suits, their boots making no sound on the metal floors. The device he had built was working better than expected. It's signal matching and canceling the Vraxian ship's power frequencies. "Their backup systems will activate in 3 minutes," Peter whispered to his team. "Be ready for Phase 2. His people nodded, their faces serious behind their protective masks. They had trained for months, preparing for a threat no one else believed would come. Inside the ship, Skithar was growing angry. His lower arms made sharp, aggressive movements as he barked orders in his native language. The other Vraxians rushed to different control panels, trying to restore their systems. "Your mate's interference is futile," he told Laura, his translator making his voice sound harsh. "Our technology is far superior to." The ship's interior lights went out, plunging the laboratory into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, but it flickered unstably, creating disorienting shadows. Laura could see the alien skin glowing with patterns she hadn't seen before. They were afraid. Peter's voice came through the ship's internal speakers, calm and steady. "Attention Varaxian vessel. Your weapons systems have been locked down. Your communication arrays are disabled. Your ship's biological containment systems are under our control." Skithar's skin turned almost black with rage. "How dare you threaten us? We are the superior species. Our weapons are useless," Peter interrupted. "Just like your scans of our colony. Did you really think we showed you everything? That we survived expanding into space by being careless?" The ship's temperature began to drop rapidly. Laura could see her breath in the emergency lighting. The Varaxians huddled closer together, their metal-like coverings growing dull in the cold. "Your species is young," Skithar said, but his confidence was wavering. "You cannot possibly understand our technology well enough to." A series of small explosions rocked the ship's hull. Peter's teams had planted charges at key points, precisely where the weapon ports were trying to open. The aliens' carefully hidden weapons crumpled before they could fire. "We understand enough," Peter's voice replied. "We understand that you think size and age make you superior, that you see us as primitive because we're younger than you. But you forgot something important about young species." The ship's doors slid open with a hiss. Peter's teams poured in from multiple directions, their weapons trained on the Varaxians. Through her microscopic drone, Peter could see Laura was already moving away from the aliens, just as they had planned. "Young species survive because they're adaptable," Peter continued. "Because they learn quickly. Because they never, ever take peace for granted." Laura reached the doorway where Peter waited, his weapon steady. She moved behind him as his team surrounded the aliens. The Varaxians' skin showed patterns of disbelief as they realized how completely they had been outmaneuvered. "And one more thing," Peter said, his voice hard. "Young species are very, very protective of their families." Surrounded by Peter's security team, the Varaxians stood motionless, their skin cycling through patterns of confusion and rage. Skithar's translator crackled as he spoke, his voice no longer smooth and controlled. "You cannot hold us," the alien commander said. "Our main fleet will come. They will detect our situation and—" "Your fleet won't detect anything," Laura interrupted, moving to one of the lab's control panels. Her time in captivity hadn't been wasted. She had studied their systems, noticed their patterns. "Your ship is broadcasting the normal operation signal. I modified it while you were busy boasting about your superior technology." Peter's team secured the other Varaxians while keeping their weapons trained on Skthar. The alien commander's forearms twitched with barely contained fury as Laura accessed the ship's research database. "The biological weapon you were developing," she said, her fingers moving across the alien controls. "Did you really think I wouldn't recognize the base compounds? I'm a xenobotanist. Studying how different species interact is my job." The screens around them filled with data as Laura revealed what she had discovered. While the aliens thought she was cowering in fear, she had been analyzing their research, finding its flaws, and planning its destruction. "Your weapon wouldn't have worked anyway," she continued. "You based it on a fundamental misunderstanding of human genetics. We're not as simple as you thought." Peter moved closer to the main control panel, keeping his weapon ready. "How bad would it have been?" "Bad enough," Laura replied, her voice hard. "But not as bad as what's about to happen to their research data." Skithar lunged forward suddenly, but Peter's team was faster. They had him restrained before he could reach Laura. The alien's skin turned almost white with panic as he watched her work. "Stop. Those are generations of research. You cannot." The screens flashed red as Laura activated the ship's containment protocols. Every sample, every specimen, every piece of biological research began breaking down at the molecular level. The Varaxians' weapon, along with all their other experiments, dissolved into harmless base elements. Primitive species, Laura said, looking directly at Scathar, learned to build safeguards into their experiments, just in case something goes wrong. Your arrogance made you skip that step. Through the ship's windows, they could see more security teams surrounding the vessel. The colony was fully mobilized now, all pretense of normalcy abandoned. Betty Walsh's voice came through Peter's comm unit. Earth Command confirms receipt of our messages, she reported. Support ships are on the way. Should be here in 3 days. Peter nodded, keeping his eyes on the aliens. Plenty of time to make our guests comfortable in the containment cells we built, the ones they never noticed during their scans. Laura finished her work at the control panel, making sure every piece of dangerous research was destroyed. She had also copied their star charts, navigation data, and technical specifications. Earth would be better prepared if the Varaxians ever returned. You could have shared your knowledge, she told Scathar as Peter's team led him away. We could have learned from each other. Instead, you chose to see us as test subjects. The alien commander's skin showed a pattern they hadn't seen before. It looked almost like shame. Perhaps, Scathar said quietly, we are not as superior as we believed. Peter wrapped an arm around Laura's shoulders as they watched the aliens being escorted out. His teams were already setting up quarantine equipment, making sure no trace of the biological research remained. Ready to go home? He asked her. Laura looked around the alien lab one last time. Home sounds good. But first, help me download the rest of their scientific database. Just because they tried to kill us doesn't mean we can't learn from their mistakes. Peter smiled. Even after everything, his wife was still a scientist at heart. 1 month after the Varaxian incident, New Eden colony had changed. New defense towers rose along the perimeter, their designs based on technology learned from the alien ship. Laura's research garden had expanded, now including a secure section, where she studied the few harmless samples she had preserved from the Varaxian lab. Peter stood at the colony's main gate, watching the Earth Defense Force ships land. They had come to transport the Varaxian prisoners back to Earth for formal diplomatic proceedings. The alien skin patterns had grown dull during their containment, showing their acceptance of defeat. The containment cells worked perfectly, Betty Walsh said, joining Peter at his observation post. Earth Command was impressed with your designs. They're implementing similar security measures at other colonies. Peter nodded, checking the security feeds on his tablet. Even with the crisis over, he maintained his vigilance. Laura's analysis of their technology helped. She found weaknesses we never would have spotted otherwise. In the month since the attack, news of New Eden's victory had spread through human space. Their small colony had become a symbol of humanity's resilience. Other worlds were studying their defense strategies, learning from their experience. Laura's voice came through his comm unit. The last database transfers are complete. Earth Science Division says they've already made breakthroughs in medical research using the Varaxian data we saved. That was the irony that made Peter smile. The aliens had come to study human weaknesses, but had ended up providing humanity with valuable scientific knowledge. Laura had made sure their research would help people instead of harm them. Scathar and his crew were led out to the transport ships. The alien commander stopped when he saw Laura approaching. His translator activated one last time. We have had time to think, he said, his skin showing complex patterns. Our species forgets what it means to be young, to fight for survival. We thought age brought superiority. We were wrong. Laura stood beside Peter, her hand finding his. Every species has something to teach and something to learn. Maybe next time, we can try that approach instead. The aliens were loaded onto the ships, their once proud vessel now being dismantled for study in Earth's research facilities. The colony watched as the transport ships took off, carrying their would-be conquerors away. That evening, Laura and Peter sat in their quarters, looking out at the twin suns setting. The defense towers cast long shadows across her research garden, where new hybrid plants grew stronger each day. Earth Command offered me a promotion, Peter said. They want me to oversee security upgrades across all outer colonies. Laura smiled. And I've been asked to lead a new xenobiology research program. They want to combine my plant hybridization techniques with what we learned from the Vraxian data. We have to leave New Eden, Peter said quietly. Laura took his hand. Or we could do both jobs from here. Show other colonies that humanity's strength isn't just in our defenses or our science. It's in building homes worth protecting, in turning attacks into opportunities, in facing threats together. Peter pulled her close, remembering the fear and pride he had felt watching her stand up to the aliens. Think they'll come back? Probably not them specifically, Laura replied. But others will. And we'll be ready. Not just with weapons and walls, but with knowledge and understanding. That's the real lesson from all this. Outside their window, New Eden's lights came on as darkness fell. The colony had grown stronger, its people more confident. They had faced an advanced alien species and won not just through force, but through intelligence, preparation, and cooperation. In the end, that was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to learn, adapt, and emerge stronger from every challenge. The Vraxians had come looking for weakness and instead had found a species worthy of respect. As the twin suns set on New Eden, Laura and Peter knew that somewhere out in the galaxy, other aliens were learning an important lesson. Never underestimate humans, especially humans in love.